There's a train a-comin'. You don't need no baggage. You just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. Don't need no ticket. You just thank the Lord. People get ready for the train to Jordan, picking up passengers coast to coast. Faith is the key, open the doors and board them. There's hope for all among those loved the most. A train coming. You don't need no baggage. You just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. You don't need no ticket. You just thank the Lord. People get
lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that the tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out of the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land.
Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step up. You're breaking my mother's heart. Shame, shame. Fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step up. You're breaking my mother's heart. Children need schools more than they need jails. That's where our society fails. First 7 years creates the child's foundation, mandatory for a healthy nation. Fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step up. You're breaking my mother's heart. How could we forget that the children come first? We left them alone and they died of thirst. Mothers and fathers confused and forlorn. When the children are missing, there's something wrong. Fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step up. You're breaking my mother's heart. Can't just focus on the kids with wealth. Can't pick and choose who gets the health care. Takes an honest look at the great divide. Looks dangerously similar to genocide. Fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step up. You're breaking my mother's heart. Fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step up. You're breaking my mother's heart. Fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step up. You're breaking another mother's heart.
I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like that river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. I go to the movie and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Then I go to my brother and I say, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking can be. Back down on my knees. Oh, there's been times when I thought I couldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
Welcome to the Holston Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. I am so glad we can connect during this time through the power of technology. Please be aware that the service is being live streamed and recorded, and that you can find subtitles in one of your menu options at the bottom of the screen. We are still posting the services to YouTube as well. I am Noelle Marshall, and together with other members of our Social Justice Committee, we present UUA's Statement of Consciousness, Undoing Systemic White Supremacy, a Call to Prophetic Action. Today, we have a guest in our virtual pulpit. We will learn from Adam Dickson, head of Johnson City's Langston Center, about community building efforts to bring forward harmonious relationships with all our brothers and sisters. He will tell us about Langston's mission and its offering to build a healthy, multicultural community. Our fifth Sunday offering is for our local NAACP to support their work towards equal voting rights. Finally, your Social Justice Committee is welcoming new members to fulfill our UUA goals. Consider joining our committee. And now, Social Justice Chairman Bob Warner will lead us in our Chalice Lighting.
Good morning. For today's Chalice Lighting, a poem by Molly Brewer entitled A Chalice Lighting for When Things Aren't Okay. My beloved people, I cannot pretend, and so I will not tell you that everything is okay right now, that there is no reason to not be angry, that you must be optimistic or at peace. I cannot pretend these things, and so I won't tell them to you. But now our chalice is lit, and so all I ask at this moment is that we remember the words of Rebecca Parker. There is a love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all. By the light of our chalice, let us rest in this love.
Systemic racism, those are big words and concepts. What do they even mean? This short video will give you a quick introduction to the term and how it impacts people of color. For a problem to be resolved, it must be properly understood. We hope this video helps in bringing more clarity to this often misunderstood term.
This is Jamal. Jamal is a boy who lives in a poor neighborhood. He has a friend named Kevin, who lives in a wealthy neighborhood. All of Jamal's neighbors are African American, and all of Kevin's neighbors are white. Because Jamal's school district is mostly funded by property taxes, his school is not very well funded. His classrooms are overcrowded, his teachers are underpaid, and he doesn't have access to high-quality tutors or extracurricular activities. Kevin's school district is also funded by property taxes, so his school is very well funded. His classrooms are never crowded, his teachers are very well paid, and he has access to high-quality tutors and lots of extracurricular activities. Kevin and Jamal live only a few streets away from each other. So how come they're growing up in such different worlds with such different opportunities for success? The answer has to do with America's history of systemic racism. To understand it better, let's look at what life was like for Kevin and Jamal's grandparents. Decades after the Civil War, many government agencies started to draw maps dividing cities into sections that were either desirable or undesirable for investment. This practice was called redlining, and it usually blocked off entire black neighborhoods from access to private and public investment. Banks and insurance companies used these maps for decades to deny black people loans and other services based purely on race. Historically speaking, owning a home and getting a college education is the easiest way for an American family to build wealth. But when Jamal's grandparents wanted to buy a house, the banks refused because they lived in a neighborhood that was redlined. So Jamal's grandparents were not able to buy a home, and because colleges could prevent them from attending through legal segregation, their options for higher education were really scarce. Kevin's grandparents, on the other hand, got a low-interest loan to buy their first house and got accepted into a handful of top universities, which traditionally only accepted white students. This opened up a wealth of opportunities that they were able to pass on to their kids and grandkids. Even as late as the 1980s, an investigation into the Atlanta real estate market showed that banks were more willing to lend to low-income white families than to middle or upper-income African-American families. As a result, today, for every $100 of wealth held by a white family, black families have $5.04. A 2017 study confirms that redlining is still affecting home values in major cities like Chicago today. This explains how Kevin and Jamal inherited vastly different circumstances. Unfortunately, the story doesn't end there. A big part of systemic racism is implicit bias. These are prejudices in society that people are not aware that they have. Let's go back to Kevin and Jamal. Against all odds, Jamal manages to be the only student from his high school to get accepted into a great university, the same one that Kevin and his high school friends are attending. But after Kevin and Jamal both graduate, Jamal notices that his resume isn't drawing as much interest as Kevin's, even though they graduated from the same program with the exact same GPA. Unfortunately for Jamal, studies show that resumes with white-sounding names get twice as many callbacks as identical resumes with black-sounding names. Implicit bias is one of the reasons why the black unemployment rate is twice the rate of white unemployment, even among college graduates today. You can see evidence of systemic racism in every area of life. The disparities in family wealth, incarceration rates, political representation, and education are all examples of systemic racism. Unfortunately, the biggest challenge with systemic racism is that there's no single person or entity responsible for it, which makes it very hard to solve. So what can you do? The first thing you can do is work towards becoming more aware of your own implicit biases. What are some prejudices that you might hold that you're not aware of? Second, let's acknowledge that the consequences of slavery and Jim Crow laws are still affecting access to opportunity today. As a result, we should support systemic changes that create more equal opportunities for everyone. Increasing public school funding and making it independent from property taxes would be a great start, so that poor and wealthy districts can receive equal access to resources. Systemic problems require systemic solutions. Luckily, we're all part of the system, which means that we all have a role to play in making it better. Peace.
Good morning. For our musical offering today, we are delighted to have HVUUC member Brittany Butler sing the 1968 Beatles song, Blackbird. Paul McCartney has said the song is a metaphor for the oppression of Black women. In 2006, he met two of the women who were part of the Little Rock Nine. This was a group of Black students who faced discrimination after enrolling in an all-white Little Rock Central High School in 1957.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly, into the light of a dark black night. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly, into the light of a dark black night. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. You were only waiting for this moment to arise.
Excuse me. I am Gary McConnell with the Social Justice Committee. And now I'm presenting the community candles. One of the gifts of being together in Zoom is that we can hold each other's joys and concerns together as a community. If you're with us in Zoom, you can type in the chat box who or what you are holding in care in your heart and that you want our community to hold with you. This week, they will not be read out loud, and I encourage you to read the chat so that you can hold each other's joys and concerns together. We light a candle for all those affected by COVID-19 pandemic, which is all of us, and some more than others. As of yesterday, 5,655,625, according to Johns Hopkins, have died worldwide from COVID-19. Our reading today will be by social justice member Diana Conco.
Good morning. I'm reading To All Get Free Together by Chris Kraus. To become an anti-racist faith community, the key question for a white majority community is not, how do we get people of color to join our faith community? It is instead, how can we make a prolonged, spiritually rooted, engaged commitment to uprooting white supremacy within our community and take ongoing collective action to challenge it in society. Our goal is not to have white people sit alongside a person of color so as to affirm that those white people aren't racist. Our goal is to build and be part of a beloved community, united to end structural oppression and unleash collective liberation in our faith communities, schools, neighborhoods, workplaces, and throughout society. Our goal is to join hands across the divisions of racism in our faith and in our communities and affirm the humanity in each other. Our goal is to join our hearts and minds to the task of destroying white supremacy in every worldview, policy, law, institution, and governing body of our society. For our faith communities to be places of healing from the nightmare of racism that haunts people of color and white people. For our faith communities to be places of nourishment, sustaining the multiracial struggles of our people to advance economic, racial, and gender justice. For our faith communities to be part of the continual process of working within the movement as part of the journey to end oppression in society. For our faith communities to raise our children of all backgrounds to be freedom fighters and practitioners of liberation values. Our goal is for our faith communities to be spiritually alive, learning from and contributing to liberation cultures and legacies. For our faith communities to be welcoming homes for people of all colors, sexualities, classes, ages, abilities, genders, and citizenship statuses. For our faith communities to regularly invite us into and prepare us for courageous action for collective liberation held in loving community for the long haul. May our faith communities be active agents in the world to help us all get free together.
We've heard a lot about systemic racism, inequality, and our collective goals to respect all members of our human family. But is it possible to dismantle systemic racism through community building? One might also ask, if so, what can one do? Our guest today is here to help us answer that question. I'm privileged to introduce Adam Dickson, Supervisor of the historic Langston Center in Johnson City, which provides resources, classes, actionable steps towards building community. Adam is also an adjunct instructor of political science at ETSU. For 16 years, he has taught the course Black American Political Thought, which examines Black political ideology and the role of race in American political development. Adam currently serves on the board of mayor and aldermen for the town of Jonesboro as vice mayor. Adam, it is an honor to have you with us.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and I'm very grateful for the invitation and grateful to interact with you all. Before I begin my talk, I do want to publicly extend my apologies. This may be just my personal thoughts just ruminating in my mind, but I do want to express my apologies to all those who have worked so diligently in planning today's service. I come from a faith tradition, and sometimes our faith tradition, it can be maybe a little, shall I say, relaxed, lackadaisical, maybe not as focused. And so I know that individuals have been very thoughtful and meticulous in their planning. And I think that that says something about excellence. I think it says something about how you feel as a faith community. And by no means do I want to disrespect that that sentiment with my actions. But I am very happy to be here today. And I'm so grateful that Noel and Minister Tiffany Sapp reached out to me. So I'm very humbled to come to you today to talk about this topic of systemic racism and how community building can be instrumental in dismantling some of the systems that we have allowed to develop in our society. I think that if we desire to dismantle systemic racism in the United States, we must first examine the guiding document that serves as our social contract. I think it's important that we kind of pay attention to the American Constitution. It's very important that we understand that in that document, It will recognize, as Dr. King will say, man's inhumanity to man by citing the slave trade, acknowledging the slave trade, and also declaring that individuals who will be labeled as slaves will be 3/5 of an individual. I think that that's very important to pay attention to, that it was on the founders' minds. The topic was on their minds, but in an effort to compromise, some would argue that the desire of maintaining the Union was most important, that they allowed for the institution, the peculiar institution, to exist and thrive. So I think it's important that we pay attention to that. It's also important, I think, to understand what's going to be seen as Lockean thought. And so John Locke, 18th century philosopher, will have his thoughts about this growing area called social contract theory. And John Locke will believe that government should really invest in the power of the individual. John Locke will believe that there should be a limited central government. So you should not have a heavy-handed central government mandating your life. And then thirdly, the state should focus on this sense of property. So as an individual, I own what I own, and it's mine. I can grow what I own, but it's mine, and I can do with it whatever I choose, however I wish to move. I can move with it however I wish to move with it. So the Constitution is rooted in this notion of the individual and how the individual thrives, how the individual makes his or her decisions. And that kind of gives us an idea as to the society in which we live in today. Kind of gives us an idea as to how the society will matriculate this thought about the idea that the people that are on my plantation are actually property. They're mine. I bought them. I don't see them as other human beings. They're actually chattel. For some individuals in our society, this idea of the contract has been very beneficial. As an individual, I work hard. As an individual, I make money. As an individual, I grow. As an individual, I can thrive. And so the Congress may pass laws that benefit me, and so I succeed. The contract state, as it's referred to by some in American political ideology, the contract state works beautifully for some, but it neglects so many. And when we think about the history of our society, if you were indigenous, if you were African, if you were Hispanic, Asian, if you were a woman, you were left out. You were left out of this idea of the contract and what it means. Throughout our country's history, individuals could be so bold as to attach their avarice, their hubris, their arrogance to the social contract to create the society that they wanted. And again, based on the idea of the contract, it's very successful for them, but very negative for so many others. When abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison contended that the Constitution was a pro-slavery document and should be discarded, his one-time protege, Frederick Douglass, felt differently. And according to Douglass, the document itself isn't the problem. It's the people who are governing it. That's the problem. It's the people who have power. That's the problem. Frederick Douglass may have an insight that is worth exploring. That insight might allow us to extend some credit to the founders. Maybe we shouldn't vilify them too much because they did have some foresight. And I'd like to think that it was perceived foresight. You've seen it when you look at the very first paragraph to the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So I hope that you pay attention there to a few of those phrases that are utilized there. We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union. I just love that. How do you form a more perfect union? It's either perfect or it's in need of perfection, but in order to form a more perfect union, all right? And then they talk about all these things that need to occur. Ensure domestic tranquility. Quick sidebar, so important that we be mindful of January 6th. So mindful that we be mindful, so important that we be mindful of efforts to disrupt and to engage in this sense of tribalism. Just a quick sidebar. Promote the general welfare. Healthcare is important. Childcare is important. Just a quick sidebar. That we establish the Constitution of the United States. Dr. King single-handedly will shift the idea of the Constitution from being individualistic to being more cooperative in his speech at the Lincoln Memorial in 1963. Dr. King's going to say that the Constitution was a promissory note, and that it related as it related to citizens of color, America had given the Negro a bad check. Dr. King's going to display a grand optimism that we, the people, could cash the check and receive the riches of freedom and the security of justice. 233 years later, we must not disregard the founding document, but give it renewed life by transforming it to reflect the values of community. Dr. King's notion of the beloved community, as I heard, I believe Ms. Conco mentioned a few moments ago, Dr. King's notion of the beloved community is our best hope of making this vision reality. We must be intentional in our desire to attack tribalism and understand our sense of interdependence. I think that is so important. And I tried to give you just a very quick brief about how the Constitution is rooted in this sense of individualism. It's going to be very important moving forward that we realize that we are interdependent. As Dr. King put it, we must all learn to live together as brothers, or we will perish together as fools. We are tied together in a single garment of destiny, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. So it's very important, I think, to realize that in so many spheres of our lives, this sense of community is important. Being a man who comes from an institution known as the Black Church, one of these days, maybe we can have a conversation about the history and the origins and the beauty and the strength of the Black Church. But coming from the institution of the Black Church, there is this notion of Black liberation theology. And the idea that when we think about the children of Israel, there are beautiful parallels to the condition of Black people. When we think about Jesus, who comes on the scene and wants to heal those who are marginalized and disenfranchised, that same God cares about me today here on earth. The Black church really reinforces those values. And so it's important to note that the God I serve recognizes the concept of community. Jesus deals so many times with humanity directly. It's interesting to note that when we think about our American Constitution, 55 white men gathered in a room to develop the document. Women weren't included, Black people weren't included, LGBT weren't included. It was 55 white men. Based on what we gather, 55 straight white men who gathered to develop the document. But the God I serve, when he interacts with people and wants to talk to people, he deals with people. And he deals with the masses. He deals with the community. And so you go to Matthew, the 5th chapter, and Jesus gives his Sermon on the Mount. and he talks to the people, right? The early church in the 2nd chapter of Acts is about people, how they form community and how they come together. Isaiah, the 11th chapter, verses 4 through 9, gives us a vivid depiction of what community is going to look like. He talks about how little children can play on the head of where the asps, the snakes, are going to lie, and the snakes aren't going to bite, and how the lion and the lamb are going to dwell together, and even the lion's going to eat straw. This idea of beautiful community, right? And how our actions are going to be. It nicely coincides with the notion of the beloved community. And again, just for the sake of saying, but with righteousness he shall judge the needy. This is the 11th chapter of Isaiah. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, with the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness the sash around his waist. The wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow will lead with the bear, the young will lie down together, and a lion will eat straw with the ox. So we must remember that anytime we desire to do good, evil and disruption lurk. And so there are 3 practical steps I'd like to leave you with when we think about community building and how we dismantle systemic racism through community building. We have to think about these practical ways in order to attack the negative forces that wish to undermine and counteract the work before us. Community building, first off, confronts materialism. And however you want to look at materialism, the idea that my for and no more, as we say in my community, the idea that I've got mine, now you get yours, the idea that my lust for money, aspiration, power at any cost. Community building confronts that. And particularly from an economic perspective, community building confronts this sense of materialism. And so I'm a proponent of cooperative economics. Don't have time today to get deep in the weeds of co-ops and cooperative economics, but I would hope that if you aren't familiar with cooperative economics, that you become familiar with cooperative economics. There are needs in our communities that we need to address, but when we come together, we can address those needs, that we don't have to, in a sense, rape people just for the sake of profit, all right? Community building, secondly, confronts racism, all right? When we come together as multicultural communities, intentional about the work, we can confront racism. We'll admit our implicit biases. We'll have serious conversations. We'll be willing to engage. We'll speak the truth in love. There won't be this sense of adversity because we'll support each other. We'll hold hands and we'll walk together, even with those that might be totally separate or totally opposite of our thoughts and views. Community building will confront racism. Multicultural relationships are important. It's time out for having relationships that are just exclusive. We're going to have to be very mindful about the fact, I know there's a Hispanic community. Where are they? I know that there's an Indian community. Where are they? So we're going to have to be intentional about that. Lastly, community building confronts militarism. And if you've noticed, Dr. King discussed 3 evils in our society: materialism, militarism, and racism. And community building attacks those 3. Militarism, yes, Dr. King's talking about that abominable war in Vietnam, but if we scale it back to its core, the idea that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, in today's society, I'm so fearful that I have to have an open carry. I need to carry my weapon wherever I go. The core of even this idea of militarism, one could argue could be rooted in this sense of, I'll call it fear. And so community building hopefully helps us build these bridges of cooperation and love, actually service to humanity. And so the God I serve, when I delve deeply into his notion of love, I find great comfort in realizing that it is service to humanity. He says, greater love hath no man than this, that a man would lay down his life for his friends. And I'm willing to serve you so much that I would even die because I care about you. Community building confronts the basic notions that can metastasize and can grow and proliferate to what we call militarism. So service to humanity, I believe, is very important. I thank you for this opportunity to speak, and blessings to all of you.
Thank you, Adam. So much for us to consider and reflect upon. And now the extinguishing of our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with all the world. There are many ways we can live out our commitment to the Unitarian Universalist principles. Please check the announcement slides during the postlude to see how you might become more involved. And please add a note to the memo section of your donation check this week that our 5th Sunday offering is for our local NAACP. The Martin Luther King events in Kingsport and Johnson City are both now rescheduled for this coming Saturday, February 5th. All are invited to represent HVUUC at one or both of these events. On Saturday, the 5th at 11:30, we'll meet at the corner of Center and East Sevier Street in Kingsport for a parade. Or if you'd like, you can meet at the church no later than 10:45 if you'd like to carpool. Then we'll scurry over to Johnson City and meet at the Carver Recreation Center for a program there beginning at 12:45, followed by the walk at 1:30. Please email us at showup@hvууc.org to let us know if you're coming to either or both of these events. And if you haven't already, please get vaccinated and make choices to help stop the spread of COVID-19.
As we go from this place, what I did. Oh, come on. As we go from this place, let us carry these words by the late Bell Hooks with us. If I were really asked to define myself, I wouldn't start with race. I wouldn't start with blackness. I wouldn't start with gender. I wouldn't start with feminism. I would start with stripping down to what fundamentally informs my life, which is that I am a seeker on the path. I think of feminism and I think of anti-racist struggles as a part of it, but where I stand spiritually, steadfastly on the path about love. As we listen to this postlude entitled A Search of Peace by Michael F. Combs, please reflect on the feelings that today's service has brought up in you and may find you peace. Please stick around in our Zoom room for after talk and reflections.